So the whole concept of that song is kind of like what Kevin was talking about, all the stuff going on in your world. The best use of you in the face of anything is to rise to a higher consciousness, right? Yes, to rise to that higher ground, which is really what the song is talking about. To step out of the stuff, not to try to hide from it, not to run away from it, not even to trying to fix it, but to rise up in consciousness to a place where you can now look and understand from a deeper sense. So I asked you when you came in today, are you ready to unpack your heart? And the reason for that is as you unpack your heart with what you need to look at or perhaps let go of, the lightness of being allows you to rise in consciousness. So I want to start. This is the last week of January. So the last week of January is the chapter where Ernest Holmes talks about how to use it, how to use this teaching. And frankly, that's all I care about anymore. Can I use it? Because if I can't use it, I don't want to waste my time learning it. I don't want to fill my mind up anymore with useless things that don't really serve me. So how do we use this teaching? How do we live this teaching out loud? Ernest Holmes says this: we only know as much as we can prove by demonstration. Anybody not know what that means? What you demonstrate in life is proving what you know. Everything in your life right now, everything that's showing up is doing nothing more than proving what you know. So, what do you know? That's really the question. What do I know? I can tell myself what I know by looking at what I've created, because what shows up in my life is a direct result of how I've been using my mind. So this is how Ernest Holmes starts the chapter off, by saying, we know as much as we can prove by demonstration. So it's a real important question to say to yourself, how much of this teaching, how much of this philosophy, how many of you have been in this teaching for over 50 years? 50, 5-0. There's 2, 40 years, 30 years. Keep your hand up if you're 30, 40, or 50, so I see how many go up. 30, 40, 50, okay? 25 and up. 20 and up. Okay, how long has it been, Lisa? 8 years, okay. How many people 5 years and up? 5 years and up. How many people are new to this? Okay, good. Oh, that's great. Yeah, you can put your hand up. Okay, new to it. Really good. So this teaching can be very cerebral, don't you think? It can be very heady. And one of the things I've been focusing on in the last 5-10 years is dropping from my head into my heart. Because it's really the heart that makes it happen. It's the feelings that make it happen. And yet, we really do have to know. So, take my heart to higher ground, is the lyric. Take my heart to higher ground. Take that part of me that feels, that part of me that understands, that part of me that knows, and take it to a place where I can know in an expansive sense, in a quantum sense. So, the title of my talk today is Going Up. And up stands for unlimited potential. So how many of you would like to go up to higher ground? Well, here's the thing. You kind of are there, but you're kind of reaching down and trying to stay up simultaneously. Anybody feel that way? Where you're just like kind of a Gumby doll? You're just like, I'm holding on to what I know, but I'm also down here kvetching. How many people kvetch? That means complaining for you non-Jewish people, right? Okay, so Ernest Holmes said this: we should learn to control our thought processes and bring them into line with reality. Notice the reality has a capital R. So I think you and I very often bring our thought process, the way we view our lives and what's going on, I think we bring them in line with reality, with the facts. And we're out here trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure it out because this happened, here's what I may want to do. Because he said this, she said this, here's what I want to do. It was fascinating being back in New York this week because, you know, There's never a time when I go to New York City where I don't replay my life, where I don't look at, I left Philadelphia when my mother died in September in 1974 when I was about to turn 19. She died, and I thought, I need to go live my life. I was in college. I was a junior in college. I was like, I got to go live life. Why am I in college? I'm not learning anything I want to use going forward. So I did. I moved out and moved to New York and started a career. And so when I go back there, I'm instantly reminded of all of the things that brought me to where I am. And I've looked at a lot of the way my life has played out. If our demonstration of life shows us what we know, oh my God, how little I knew back then. Because I got some of the stuff I wanted, but they never played out. Anybody get something that you really wanted and it just doesn't play out the way you thought it was going to play out? Anybody have a first marriage? Or a second, maybe? Yeah. So, and it just doesn't really quite play out the way you thought it would. So this has been a really amazing week for me. Kevin and I went to Broadway shows all week. And in the past, I would go to Broadway shows and I would have a feeling of loss. I would have a feeling of, God, I still remember the day Yvette Bishop, who starred in many Broadway shows, and Marcia Mitzman, who was one of the stars of Chess, and she did a lot of Broadway shows, and me and Yvette were walking our toddlers in strollers through Studio City, and we ran into Marcia Mitzman. And the three of us just kind of looked at each other, and we were like, we used to be Broadway stars. Look at us. But when I look at it now, I'm like, yeah, we were Broadway stars. And then we had children. And then we gave the time it took to raise our children. All of that's perfect, unfolded perfectly. So we went and saw shows this week. And for the first time, I wasn't sitting in a theater wishing I was on the stage. I didn't. And you know why? Because I knew that if I wanted to be on the stage, I could be. And that I will be at some point again. And I wasn't feeling apprehensive or like something passed me by. I was just thinking, wow, this is great. So we started our week by seeing a play, the biggest hit play on Broadway, called Appropriate or Appropriate. Either way you look at it, it tells the story. And it was with Sarah Paulson, our friend, who's starring in it. And it was brilliant, as depressing as hell, but brilliant. When it was over, it was just like an amazing evening of theater. And then we went the next night. You're going to think we spent the whole week being depressed. The next night, we went to see the brand new world premiere musical of Days of Wine and Roses. How many of you know that story? Really depressing. I mean, really depressing. By the end of it, you're just like, it's about two people that fall in love and become alcoholics together and can't break the cycle. It's just so depressing. And when it was over, Kevin turned to our friend and he said, we should go have a drink. And our friend said, I'll be having tea. But it was really, really depressing. But what an exquisite experience to see the stagecraft, and the two stars were brilliant. And then we went to see a comedy, thank God. We went to see Titanic, which is the story of Titanic told through another person who was on the ship that nobody knew she was on the ship, Celine Dion. And so Celine Dion then tells you the story of Titanic. It is hysterical. It's been running a year, it's still sold out, just hysterical. And then on Friday night, we went to see the show that I really wanted to see since it opened about 7 months ago. It's a show called Merrily We Roll Along. And I was there when Merrily We Roll Along opened. It ended up being Stephen Sondheim's biggest flop ever. It only ran 44 previews and like 14 performances and closed. Stephen Sondheim, Hal Prince, George Firth, some of the biggest names on Broadway with the biggest hits that had been happening for the last decade prior to this. This was 1981. I had just starred on Broadway and worked with Stephen Sondheim and didn't get into this show, but I went to opening night. And it was an enormous bomb, enormous flop, and broke a lot of people's hearts. And the score was breathtaking, probably one of his best scores, but the show was a disaster. The story is about a young man named Franklin Shepard. And this is Jonathan Groff. How many of you know Jonathan Groff? Jonathan Groff has a lot of TV credits. He also nominated for a Tony for Spring Awakening. Brilliant, brilliant. Nominated for a Tony for Hamilton. Brilliant actor. And Jonathan Groff came to NoHo to one of our services. I didn't recognize him. At the time, he was in the TV show Glee. And my daughter, as I was saying hello to people as they were coming through the line, Jonathan was in line to say hi to me, and my daughter suddenly appeared at my side. And she's like holding my hand, like I had no circulation. She's holding my hand. And I was like, Nora, what's up? She goes, I have to meet this. I have to meet Jonathan. I was like, Jonathan who? And then I met him. But and I'd seen him on Glee, but I didn't know his history, his theater history. And Nora was just like, and she was so excited. And then all of a sudden, all the girls from the teen girls were all surrounding me as I'm talking to this very handsome young man who's one of the stars of Glee on television. So he is now the star of Merrily We Roll Along in this. The show went from flop, biggest flop ever, to the biggest hit on Broadway this year. You cannot get a ticket. What happened? 91, 201, 211, 221. 43 years. Something happened in those 43 years. What happened? Why did this huge flop turn into this mega hit? It's not just the direction, although that was a big part of it. Same show, same story, same music. So the story is about a brilliant composer who sells his dream to become a rich producer in Hollywood, stops writing music and becomes this rich producer in Hollywood. The device that's used is that the entire story is told backwards. So the show opens with Franklin Shepard in his 40s having this enormous success. And he is depressed and unhappy in a loveless marriage, and they show you all of this. It opens with this devastating opening scene. And then, one by one, the show goes back 4 or 5 years, shows you how that happened. And it goes back 4 or 5 years and shows you how that happened. But as it keeps going back, he gets younger. He gets closer to his true self. He gets closer to his dreams. And when it finally goes all the way back, you are left at the beginning of their lives in their 20s, and they're on a rooftop looking at the stars, talking about all that they're going to do. And of course, it's very bittersweet because you're watching this 22-year-old, all three of them, him and the two co-stars. The other co-star is Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter, who is brilliant in the show. And here they are at 22, but you know what's going to happen in 20 years. So it's very bittersweet as you're watching them singing, it's our time. We're gonna be the guys that make it happen. We're gonna make our dreams. We're gonna turn musical theater upside down. We're gonna. So as you can only imagine, I was sitting there, Kevin and I both, when the intermission came, we almost couldn't stand up. We were so enthralled, and so as the whole audience was. Because what this show did so clearly that it didn't do, by the way, in 1981. First of all, in 1981, they cast 20-year-olds to do the show and put it on a high school set. It was this concept, did not work. This time they cast 40-year-olds who could go back to their 20s, and you got the depth. But what I noticed and what I understood, and why I'm bringing this up today, not just to say, here's what I did last week, is this. every time the scene went backwards, you saw what a choice did. You watched them make a decision knowing full well how that was going to demonstrate. And it just kept doing it over and over. And you're almost sitting there going, don't do that. Don't make that decision. But you know they did. So you're watching it. So you can't help but as you're sitting there watching the show, you are saying to yourself, oh my God, that makes perfect sense. Of course this happened because I made this decision. Of course this happened. And for me, I actually went all the way back to Philadelphia where I was like, I left Philadelphia to go to Broadway just to give a finger to my family, to prove to them I was something. It wasn't about expressing my talent. It wasn't about any of that. I wanted to prove something. That choice to do it that way made me one of the most difficult actors to work with, somebody with a real chip on his shoulder, real attitude. I'm shocked that I got from here to here to here to here before somebody finally said, he's a nut. Seriously. And I was able to go back and look at all that with such a soft heart and a loving heart for me, as opposed to, damn, I could have done this, I could have done that. So, the last chapter, how to use it, understanding our choices. You want a simple way to know how to use this teaching? Understand the choices you're making as you make them. Not later. Don't wait until the demonstration happens. Demonstration happens as the choice is being made. So the only way to use this teaching is to be conscious of the choices you're making going forward in this moment. We also had a lot of meetings this week. We have a number of shows that we will be taking to New York in this year. And so there were a lot of choices, and I'm sitting there watching all the different choices in the meetings with producers and all the different things we're meeting with, and I was very quiet, which is unlike me. I was just very quiet. I was like, I see this choice, I see this choice, I can see how this choice will work, this choice too. And I was like, however, there's something in me, there's something in you, Dave, that already knows the choice that will serve you the best in every situation. Every single one of you, there is a knowing inside of you. Why do we talk about going deeper? Why is this whole year about lean into the more? Lean into that part of yourself. Already knows. You have something big happening for you. Whatever that is, however that unfolds, it's going to be for your highest good, to the degree that you allow the choice to be led by that in you that already knows the choice. So that's how you use this teaching. So I have a question for you. Do you remember what you wanted when you were in your early 20s? Lisa was winning awards skating all around the world. But what did you want when you were in your early 20s? I can tell you when I was in my early 20s, I wanted to be a Broadway star. And fortunately, by 25, I was. And to quote chorus line, that ain't it, kid. That ain't it, kid. It didn't fulfill me. In fact, it was torture. It's a little scary when you're suddenly in a show, you get your dream, and it's not your dream, and now you're dreamless. You're like, oh, this doesn't feel like what I thought it was. But I had other dreams too. So what were your dreams when you were in your 20s? And they don't have to be your dreams now. In fact, they're probably not. You have evolved, you have morphed, you have grown, you have expanded. There are other dreams to have. Yes, I had a dream of being a huge star, but I also had a huge dream of being a father. I wanted to be a father since I was a son. It's quite a sentence. I wanted to be a father since I was a child. I used to play I was gay, so I was playing house. I was playing constantly with the girls in the neighborhood. Let's pretend we're married and have kids. I probably said it just like that. And they were too young to realize what they were talking to. But I wanted to be a father. That was one of my biggest dreams. So when fatherhood came, I was very happy to take that 20 years and put whatever the other dreams were on a back burner. So now I have another question for you. Are you in touch with what you want now? Are you in touch with what you want now? Or are you just rolling along? That's kind of the whole point of the show. Rolling along, merrily we roll along, we just move along. Are you in touch with that thing inside of you that wants something else? And look at these two, Karen and Brad. They are so in touch with which mountain they want to go climb. They are so in touch with how they want to explore the world together. Are you in touch with what you want for the remainder of your life? Ernest Holmes said this: there is a direct link between your choices and your experiences. From this moment on, I hope you remember that there's such a direct link between your choices and your experiences that you are very cognizant of the choices you're making. Even the choices you're making that seem like detours. Anybody have detours where they make choices and it seems like, well, that's not what I really meant to do, but boom, zing, right? Even the detours are going to take you where you need to go. You just may take a longer time. And there may be something over there to look at, right? But making those choices. So Ernest Holmes said this: we should work not with anxiety, but with expectancy, not by coercion, but with conviction, not through compulsion, but in a state of conscious recognition and receptivity. And I looked at these three words: anxiety, coercion, compulsion. And that could be the title of my autobiography for the first 40 years of my life. Anxiety, coercion, and compulsion. I think about that. I'm like, I was so anxious because I thought I had to make this happen. Anybody? Didn't you feel like you had to make it happen? You were responsible. And now we know we are responsible. But what he says here is so brilliant. Not anxiety, expectancy. But you can't expect unless you know who you are. When I know who I am, I expect only the best. If I am God and the expression of God, then I must expect the greatness on demand that is mine. So not anxiety and not coercion. How many times have you tried to make something happen? And you're like making deals and you're compromising because you're going to make it happen. And the whole time the universe is saying, this one let go. Anybody? But you don't. Do you know how fun those experiences are? Because I've been through a lot of them. And then things come along like the NoHo Arts Center, which just fell in our laps. And then we had, how many years? 16 years? 18 years of probably the most creative, amazing time that I had spent putting theater and church together as one thing. That was no coercion. That was no anxiety. Well, there's some anxiety. That was not compulsion. That was allowing the universe to do what it's there to do. So Ernest Holmes wrote that. And he wrote this: a new light is coming into the world. We are on the borderline of a new experience. The veil between spirit and matter is very thin. A new science, a new religion, and a new philosophy are rapidly being developed. And he wrote that in 1926. 100 years ago, he wrote that. And I think, just like Jesus said everything he said, and 2,000 years later, people are starting to understand what he was saying about love. I think 100 years after Ernest Holmes, we are finally starting to understand what he's saying here. The veil between spirit and matter is thin. Your choices are your experiences. Every experience you're having, you've chosen. Now, you may not have chosen it to show up exactly like this, but you're not in charge of that. That unfolds what's the highest and best for the entire universe. So, choices. Ernest Holmes says, every being is fully provided for at any age. How's that sound? Every being is fully provided for at every age. At the end of Merrily We Roll Along, as I said, we're on the roof, and they're singing that song, Our Time. The last image of the show is different. This they did change. Because usually it just ends there. They're on the roof, it's happy, and you want to go out and just drink because it's so depressing. This was different. First of all, he never changed his clothes the whole show. He had the same suit on the whole show. Just jackets came off. And it was at that last moment I went, oh, he's doing what I did. He's standing still on the rooftop of his Bel Air mansion, looking up at the stars, the 40-some-odd-year-old. And the 20-year-old is standing on the top of his rent-controlled building in Upper Manhattan, looking up at the stars, and it's the same person. And we very swiftly move back to that moment where the play started, when everybody left after this debacle of a party, and he's standing there. And you get a glimpse into his eyes that he's no longer going to move forward the way he's been moving forward. And you get a glimpse of that 20-year-old coming back up, coming back in, saying, I'm still here. And that's why this quote's up. Every being is fully provided for at any age. Our job is to know that. To know that no matter where you are, who you are, or what you've been doing with your life, you are at the precipice of a new dawn. You are ready for something big to move through you. You are ready for the more that is ready to express itself as you. It's all there. None of this matters anything other than as a reference. That's it. All of this is wide open. How do I use it? How do I use this teaching? It's so simple. It is so simple. I have a mind and I have an ability to choose what is right for me every single moment. When I am in higher ground, when I am in the highest consciousness I know, when I drop into the depths of my being, then my choices are divinely made and everything is possible. So, you can go down or you can go up. It's all up to you. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.